Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, and today we're talking about the Villion Syrah 2019, which is a wine of origin Cape South Coast. But what even is the Cape South Coast? As I've said before, the Cape South Coast is not one region, but it's a whole bunch of regions that have been jammed together, and it spreads as far west as Elgin and as far east as Plettenberg Bay. So it's really far too broad to be very useful. But if we zoom in a little more closely on Villion family wines, we'll see that they are a family-run outfit that bases their operations at Barton Vineyards estate in Botrivier. Their policy is to select parcels of fruit from vineyards around the South African winelands in order to be able to create a wine that best suits the style they're trying to achieve. So what style are they trying to achieve? Well, the HanDrinksSolo Club has been exploring the relationship between Syrah and Viognier, and this wine is a particularly stylish example of the synergy that is possible between these two cultivars. So the blend is made up of 85% Syrah and 7% Viognier. There's of course some splashes of Grenache Noir and Mourvèdre, but the main show is Syrah versus Viognier. The grapes were fermented in open top fermenters, and when they were matured in barrels, all the barrels were toasted according to a Burgundian toast regime where they stayed for 11 months. And you might say, Han, what on earth is a Burgundian toast regime? It sounds like a bizarre system of government out of a Terry Pratchett novel. I thought I could try and give you a mental image, or instead I could literally take pieces of toast to show you what I mean. Because the sorts of caramelization reactions and Maillard reactions that go on in a piece of oak are very similar to those that go on in a piece of bread when you're trying to make toast. I call this Sasko Sam's Guide to Oak Toasting. And really, oak coopers toast oak for 3 reasons. The first reason is to make oak a little more pliable when they're trying to shape it into a barrel. The second reason is to tone down some of those raw oak tannins, but also to help release some of those vanillins and lactones so that they're more soluble when it comes time to impart them into the wine. And the third reason is to act as a sort of seal, because winemakers do worry that raw oak can not only leach rough wood tannins into the wine, but can in fact also leach some of the flavors out of a wine. Toasting the oak is supposed to be able to reduce that process. When it comes to the Sasko Sam Guide to Oak Toasting, we have to start on the lightest end possible, which is the nouveau, super reactive school of thought in winemaking. They're kind of like the vegans of winemaking, which is to say they don't want the oak toasted at all because any toasting is interfering with the process. And so what they do is use hot water to soften the oak and make it more pliable so that the toasting is not necessary, so that none of those vanillins and lactones are released or made more soluble. So one step up from raw oak is Burgundian toasting, like the Villion Syrah that we're drinking today. It is a very light level of toasting, and as a result, the level of lactones and vanillins and oak flavors that imparted into the wine are a little more subtle. The next step up from Burgundian toast is Bordeaux-style oak toasting, which is a little more aggressive. As the barrels are toasted for a little bit longer and achieve a slightly darker color on the inside, they start to impart more obvious oak flavors that may include creme brulee, actual flavors of toast, heavy caramels, and cocoa. And finally, we have the coffee chocolate pinotage oak toasting regime, which looks a little something like this. And at this point you might say, geez, thanks Sasko Sam, but what does the wine actually taste like? Well, let's take a sniff and see. There is a whole bunch of stuff that rushes up to greet you out of the glass, including some dried lavender elements, perhaps some floral notes, and then there is what could be deemed a peach element. Now, this could be purely the power of suggestion in that we know that Viognier can bring peach aromas to a wine, but you tell me, drop your comments in the section below and tell me whether you smell elements of peach in this wine. Anyway, peaches aside, there is quite a pronounced savory, salty, moody, almost olive brine aroma going on in the wine. And then, as suggested by the very light Burgundian style toasting, the oak elements are quite subtle. So when we take a sip, well, we are immediately reminded that this is another wine that can be entered as evidence into the great discussion about the stylistic differences between Shiraz and Syrah. As I mentioned before, one of the theories about the difference between the two is that it comes down to the style of wine that you're making. Syrah being lighter, more aromatically driven, with less waves of big rich fruit. On the palate, there are some really lovely red fruit notes that I perhaps missed on the aromas. There's a kind of sour cherry and even maybe some pomegranate going on. The acidity really is quite pronounced. The tannins, on the other hand, are quite fine, although they're certainly not lacking. I suppose if I had to sum the wine up, I'd say it manages to express a beautiful level of intensity without necessarily having to slouch across your palate like John Goodman in the 90s. Okay, so if you have not subscribed to the HanDrinksSolo YouTube channel, now would be the time to do that so that you can keep up to date with the 6 wine videos that I publish each month. And if you have any more questions on Syrah or Viognier or Villion wines or the Cape South Coast Syrah, then feel free to drop them in the comment section on the website HanDrinksSolo.com.